Feeling stuck or unfulfilled? Searching for more meaning in your work and life? Wondering what's next? You're not alone, and you're in the right place. This is Focus on Why, the podcast that turns reflection into action. I'm Amy Rowlinson, and each week I dive deep with guests who've chosen to live and work with purpose. Together we explore what drives them, shapes their decisions, and gives their life meaning. Through real stories and honest conversations, you'll discover how to gain clarity, make confident choices, and create a life that truly matters. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why. Before we dive in, do you need help creating a more purposeful way of life? Through one-to-one coaching, I can help you clarify your why and create a plan that aligns your values with your work. Book a free 30-minute discovery call with me today. The booking link is in the show notes. Hello and welcome to episode 520. This is my 84th solo episode. And what have I been up to since my last Reflections with Actions episode that I released on the 13th of May? The short answer? A lot more than I realised. As I look back through my diary over the past 5 weeks, I was struck by just how full this period has been. It's been a season of celebration, change, creativity, and quite a bit of stretching in every sense of the word. There have been some beautiful milestones along the way. My son Eddie turned 21. 3 close friends celebrated their birthdays. I reached 1,000 days sober. And John and I marked 25 years of marriage and 31 years together. To celebrate, we gave ourselves 2 days away at Champneys Forest Mere. And away from work, the to-do lists and the usual pace of life, we had the chance to pause, reflect, and simply enjoy being together in the sunshine. It reminded me that sometimes the greatest luxury is not what you do, but the space you create to notice how far you've come. I shared a short post on LinkedIn about our anniversary celebration and was genuinely taken aback by the response. It's now had over 80,000 impressions and so many thoughtful comments. It seems that beneath the professional headlines and leadership insights, we're all still deeply drawn to stories of connection and love. Work has been equally full. I created a new masterclass on meaningful success, which I've now delivered twice, once as a trial online session with 12 senior executives, and once as an in-person 90-minute workshop. Both landed powerfully, resonating at a much deeper level than I expected. Actually, that's not true. I knew it would land, and I knew it would resonate on a very deep level. One CEO has already invited me to work with their wider organisation. Behind the scenes, my VA has been helping me automate more of my business so I can step away from the admin and focus on what matters most. And now, finally, I'm back home. My office is unpacked, the house move is complete, and I can feel my attention returning fully to my business. Although house move makes it sound simple, it was anything but. For the past 6 months, we've been living in a rental while our home was being refurbished. Officially, we moved into this house last year on the 8th of July. And then we moved out again on the 2nd of January for the refurb to start working. And then unofficially, we've moved back in. That means in less than a year, we've completed 3 full house moves. 1 would have been enough. The rental was just 2 doors away, which helped enormously as we could stay close to the renovation work without living in the middle of it. We've done that before when the children were very small, and we promised ourselves we'd never do that again. But just as we were due to move back in, John injured his back. So I found myself moving everything 2 doors down during the first heat wave of this year with a hand truck over 9 very long days. I had some help from one of the site team for the heavier items, and my daughter Holly supported me for 3 days. And our wonderful cleaner, who's been with us for 18 years, helped get everything clean and ready. It was exhausting, but we are finally in, and it's absolutely worth it. Alongside all of this, life has continued at pace. Speaking events in Birmingham and Leicester, workshops, networking, coaching sessions, podcast recordings, and somewhere in the middle of it all, we've been settling back into that home. John also built my new greenhouse, which I've since filled with seeds and young vegetable plants, which I'm now protecting from the intense heat. But that's led to something that I didn't quite expect, a real growing love of gardening. I've been propagating my plants from the last home to bring to this one. Jasmine, roses and hydrangeas, all from small cuttings, and I've finally watched them bloom, and that has been incredibly rewarding. I've also discovered something equally unexpected in a nearby meadow, nesting skylarks. I found myself returning almost daily just to stand and listen to their uninterrupted song and watch their incredible aerial displays. It's become a small but important ritual to my day, and I've since shared it with family and friends so they can experience it too. On top of that, I seem to be expanding my creative skills in all directions: gardening, sewing, upcycling. I've made curtains, voiles, Roman blinds, and I've even upholstered a headboard and made a stair guard using fabric remnants. It feels less like acquiring hobbies and more like rediscovering a very hands on way of creating. And then there's been one final, completely unexpected moment. During a break at my fifth one of many women's conference, I checked my phone and found a message from my aunt with a photo that stopped me in my tracks. My cousin had been travelling home through Terminal 1 at Changi Airport in Singapore when he'd spotted my book, Focus on Why, on display in WH Smith. I genuinely couldn't believe seeing that photo. I remember an early conversation with my publisher, Sue Richardson from the Right Book Press, when I shared with her that quiet hope of one day seeing my book in airport stores. She gently explained how rare that is and that airport retailers tend to focus on established bestsellers, so I shouldn't assume it would happen. And that's why this moment felt so significant. Changi Airport is one of the world's major international hubs, welcoming tens of millions of travellers every year. To think that my book is sitting there waiting to be discovered by someone on their journey is incredibly humbling. And when I shared the photo with Sue, she explained that while our distributor in Southeast Asia had made it available, retailers only stock what they believe will genuinely resonate with their customers. Her response captured it perfectly. Who knows who might pick it up there? It's really exciting. She's right. So often, we move quickly from one goal to the next without pausing long enough to recognise what's already unfolding in front of us. This felt like one of those moments worth noticing. So that's my update, and it brings me back to the purpose of this Reflections with Actions episode. The reminder that reflection is not passive. It's a pause that sharpens intention. As you listen today, I invite you to consider your own story. What is asking for your attention right now? What needs to be noticed, acknowledged, or understood more deeply? Most importantly, what action might emerge from that awareness? Because true growth doesn't come from insight alone. It comes from what we choose to do with it. So let's turn our focus to the first episode we'll be covering today, which is episode 515, Beyond the Lens with Sarah Hoyle. Sarah's a mindset and confidence coach, as well as a personal brand photographer dedicated to empowering midlife women in business to feel confident, motivated, and joyful in both life and work. Through her unique blend of mindset coaching and empowering photography, she helps women break free from self-doubt, reconnect with their inner power, and show up authentically in their brands. Her mission is to help women feel truly seen and heard so they can shine, both in front of the camera and within their businesses. With the right mindset, confidence, and energy, Sarah believes everything else begins to flow. Combining 13 years of photography with mindset coaching, she now helps midlife women in business to step confidently in front of the camera and embrace who they truly are. In this inspiring conversation, she explores the impact of vulnerability, safe female spaces, and rewriting the stories we tell ourselves. If you've ever struggled with confidence or self-image, this episode will inspire you to stop hiding and start shining beyond the lens. From surviving schoolyard bullying to thriving as a businesswoman who champions other women, Sarah's raw honesty and willingness to share her journey serves as a beautiful, enlightening example of reflection with action. If you allow yourself to pause and absorb her words, you'll recognize powerful themes that can ignite purposeful change in your own life. Much of Sarah's story is woven through her own reflections on self-worth, confidence, and the masks we wear to feel accepted. For many years, she judged herself harshly, her appearance, her social interactions, operating from a deep-seated belief formed in childhood that she had to be perfect looking and fit in to be popular, aka loved. Through her school years and into adulthood, that internal narrative played over and over, manifesting as self-doubt, body image struggles, and a tendency to mold herself to fit various expectations. You might recognize elements of this in your own life. the inner critic that whispers you're not enough, or the exhausting effort of putting on different faces depending on your audience. When you listen to Sarah's journey, you're invited to ask yourself, where am I putting on a mask? When am I most myself? And when am I performing for the approval of others? This reflection alone is powerful because it brings unconscious patterns into your conscious awareness, an essential first step towards change. What's remarkable about Sarah is not merely that she reflected on her struggles, but that she chose to do something profoundly constructive with that insight. She moved from self-critique to action, creating her passion project and purpose-driven business. The journey was not linear. It involved years of wrestling with self-worth, cycles of shame, and hitting emotional rock bottom. Her action was not avoidance or superficial positivity, but a decision to use what she'd learned to create the safe, validating space she once longed for. In her words, I want to be able to support and help other women that now realize that they can be the author of their own lives. The real power in this is the movement from why me to what now. She stopped waiting for someone else to rescue her or validate her pain, and instead became that guiding voice for herself and others. She reminds you that even when you don't have it all worked out, you're not alone, and you can use your journey, your pain, and your insights not only for self-healing, but for creating something meaningful for others. This is where reflective insight converges with bold action. Sarah could have remained mired in victimhood and resentment, but she chose instead to channel her experiences into her purpose, empowering other women to be visible, confident, and wholly themselves. If you're ready to couple your reflection with action, consider these questions. Where have you faced challenges that shaped your self-worth or worldview? How do these shape your current narrative? Who would benefit if you turned your pain into purpose? What safe space can you create for yourself or others that you wish you'd had? Which parts of your life still feel out of alignment, where you continue to wear a mask? What is one step you can take, however small, towards embracing your authenticity today? The lesson here is clear. Your past, with all its ups and downs, losses and lessons, is not wasted. Like Sarah, you can choose to accept every experience as a stepping stone towards something greater by reflecting honestly on your life and taking action. Even when it feels messy or imperfect, know you're building a life of meaning and intention. You don't need to wait until the website's finished or the qualifications are obtained or every negative self-belief is banished. As Sarah affirms, you don't have to have it all perfect to just go for it. And as I've experienced, there's no such thing as perfect. So if Sarah and I can do it, you can too. Purpose and meaning are not found in endless analysing or waiting for external validation. They're forged in the crucible of action, informed by honest, compassionate self-reflection. By listening to others focus on why journeys on this podcast, you give yourself permission to reflect, to reimagine, and to take action in your own life. Remember, reflection with action is your path to fulfillment. Nurture that insight within you and step forward, imperfect perhaps, but entirely yourself. Next up is episode 516, Championing Men in the Workplace with Carolyn Hobdey. Carolyn's career was built at the coalface of business, not in theory, but in practice. Less human resources and more human being. Carolyn brings 25 years of corporate experience in the world's largest employers and globally recognized brands as a board-level leader in FMCG, retail, construction, and more, where she shaped their futures by tackling messy, complex human problems head-on. Is it time to rethink how we talk about men in the workplace? Carolyn draws on her experience in male-dominated boardrooms and complex personal dynamics to challenge the narrative. She shares why meaningful change comes from collaborating with men, not criticizing them, and how emotional literacy and more human leadership can transform both work and home life. Exploring purpose, legacy, and the fire in her belly, Carolyn offers candid insights on bridging divides, improving dialogue around masculinity, and creating healthier, more connected workplaces, ultimately making work better for everyone by championing men in the workplace. What does it mean to really challenge the status quo? How do you turn reflection into purposeful action? And why is this important, not only for yourself, but for everyone around you? In this episode, 516 of Focus on Why, I sat down with Carolyn, whose journey and insights into workplace culture and gender dynamics prompt you, the listener, to not only reflect, but act in a meaningful way. If you're a regular listener, you'll have heard me share that your why is the emotional heartbeat that gives your purpose life. It's unearthed in those moments of deep introspection where you question what's meaningful and what you want to stand for. But gaining that clarity is only half the journey. What you then choose to do about it, your actions, ultimately shapes your purpose in the world. Carolyn's experience offers a masterclass in this very process. One of the most significant topics explored in this conversation is the need to improve dialogue around and with men in the workplace. Carolyn reflects that it's never been tougher than it is today to be a man in our society. She recognises that whilst the workplace remains dominated by men in positions of power, perception is quickly shifting, generating negativity and uncertainty for many men who are unsure of their place and how to respond to changing expectations. Now pause for a moment and consider, how often do you genuinely explore what it's like for the so-called dominant group, be that men or another majority, in your environment? Are you, as Carolyn puts it, peeling back the layers of the onion, engaging in uncomfortable conversations to uncover how others feel, even if you're not part of their group? This is reflection in action, acknowledging that you don't have all the answers, but choosing to lean in and learn, especially from perspectives that may be uncomfortable or surprising. From reflection, Carolyn decided that the path to a better workplace for everyone, women included, lay in working with men, not against them. Instead of resorting to blame or antagonism, she sought to foster collaboration and improve that dialogue. This is where action emerges, not by sitting in reflection alone, but by bringing her observation into the real world, opening communication channels and challenging defensive cultures. Another critical area explored is the concept of legacy. Carolyn prompts us to think deeply about the impression we leave behind, not just in the grand sweep of a career, but in every conversation, every moment of our day. Legacy isn't just what you leave when you retire, it's the feeling people have after you leave a room, how they grow after working with you, or even how they feel after a simple coffee chat. Ask yourself, what do you want people to say about you when you're not there? Are your daily actions aligned with that aspiration, or are you simply going through the motions? Measuring your impact, as Carolyn points out, isn't always about hard data or immediate, tangible results. The true measure can be the quality of the conversations that you're having and the courage those around you find to share truths they've never previously spoken aloud. This can prompt you to reflect on the value of intangible impact. If you're waiting for a corporate survey or a headline figure to tell you that you're making a difference, you may be missing where the real transformation is happening. Those moments when people feel seen, heard, and able to be their authentic selves at work or at home. If you want to turn this reflection into action in your own life, start by asking yourself, where are the unspoken conversations in my team, workplace, or family? What would it take me to initiate dialogue that brings understanding rather than builds walls? What legacy am I creating today in a way I listen, respond, and encourage others, especially those whose experiences may be different from my own? Am I, like Carolyn, willing to live in the uncertainty of not having all the answers, but still step forward, minding each interaction for new insight and possibility? True growth, fulfillment, and impact happen when you combine self-awareness with tangible steps. Whether by championing a misunderstood group, instigating safer conversations, or simply being present and authentic in your daily engagements, you can create a ripple effect, one that transforms not just your own why and purpose, but those of everyone you encounter. So today I encourage you to reflect. What small action can you take, born from insight that makes your environment a little better for all? What legacy will you choose to build brick by thoughtful brick through the choices you make now? Next, we turn to episode 517, The Power of Legacy with Louise Camby. Louise is a professional speaker who gives talks on a range of topics, including wildlife, Concord, and her grandfather, Johnny Douglas. As director of the family music business, Louise cultivates her grandfather's legacy, keeping his music alive, as in his lifetime he composed many film scores, including the 1970s film The Railway Children. Louise shares the remarkable story of rediscovering her grandfather's original Marvel animation soundtracks from the 1980s, including iconic music from Spider-Man, Dungeons and Dragons, and The Incredible Hulk. Bringing these long-lost scores back to life through streaming, vinyl, and CD, Louise reflects on the emotional power of music, nostalgia, and creative legacy. In this inspiring conversation, she explores purpose, family connection, and the ripple effect of honouring the past while creating meaning in the present. Discover how preserving childhood memories through music became Louise's soundtrack to purpose, illustrating the power of legacy. What would be the soundtrack for your purpose? Have you ever stumbled across a forgotten object, a photograph, a letter, a sound that unexpectedly rekindled a sense of connection with your own family or past? What did you do with that moment? Did you pause and let it slip away, or did you act, allowing it to change your perspective, perhaps even your trajectory? For me, it was stumbling across my late grandfather's commonplace scrapbook, which he'd kept for 5 years as a prisoner of war in World War II, which then subsequently led to me co-writing a book with him. For Louise, it was her discovery of her grandfather's lost music. When I asked Louise about what she was focusing on right now, her answer was not about personal achievement, but about actively honouring and cultivating her grandfather's remarkable musical legacy. Not just about remembering him, but bringing the past into purposeful present-day action. What began as a moment of reflection, literally stumbling over boxes of old Marvel animation music, has since become a clarion call to act, to digitize, share, and keep alive the music that defined and continues to define generations' childhoods. From this powerful conversation with Louise, I encourage you to reflect on the interwoven nature of legacy and purpose, and crucially, to consider the action you might take in response to what you discover. The act of legacy cultivation, as Louise lives it, is a fully immersive experience. Notice how Louise describes the process: researching, reaching out to fans, seeking advice with humility, and launching painstakingly crafted box sets in vinyl and CD. It's a journey of learning, sometimes letting yourself be vulnerable enough to say, "I have no idea of what I'm doing, please help me," and then opening yourself to the generosity of others. Here, reflection is not a solo exercise, but one which draws you into connection with your family, your history, and an ever-expanding community. If you've ever doubted the ripple effect your actions could have, take inspiration from Louise's observations on the soundtrack to childhood that she's restored for nostalgic fans worldwide. She describes how they've reached out to her to share how this music is a very fibre of their formative memories, how they've been waiting 40 years for this. Witnessing such gratitude, Louise has been moved to tailor her releases, choosing formats and crafting booklets with the fan experience at the forefront of her mind. Her reflection, listening to the echoes of the past, sometimes literally through tape recordings of her late grandfather's voice, is consistently partnered with action. Thought becomes deed, and intention becomes reality. There's a theme here that demands your consideration. Legacy is not the passive trail we leave behind, but the living, breathing consequence of thoughtful action taken today. Louise reflects candidly on what legacy means to her. It's shaped not just by what you intend, but by what you actually do, the conversations you have, the decisions you make, and the stories you choose to preserve or share. She reminds you that unless you're intentional, your legacy may merely happen by accident outside your control. How would it feel to be more present in determining the stories, values, achievements, or memories you leave behind? Reflect, just for a moment, on the valuable insight Louise shares as she listens to her grandfather's recorded interviews and discovers the answers to questions she wishes she could have asked him in life. This is a potent intersection of past and present, where self-discovery is only possible through active engagement, with the tapes, with fans, with family. Through this, she experiences nostalgia, but also deep transformation, inheriting a new sense of purpose that now defines her direction. This episode 517, is your invitation to view your own why, your deepest motivator, not as an end point, but as a call to purposeful action. Like Louise, you might find that your purpose is not always born of deliberate design, but sometimes emerges from what you choose to do with the situations life throws at you. If you're uncertain of your direction or your legacy, start by reflecting. Whose stories matter to you? What dormant passions or family treasures might you trip over if only you looked? What questions linger unanswered? Now consider the action. Will you write down family memories, digitize old recordings, start those conversations, share what you find? As Louise demonstrates, doing so could feed not only your own sense of purpose, but also the lives and legacies of those around you. Remember, it's in coupling reflection with action that your purpose becomes something tangible and your why is given both shape and momentum. The next step, the one that transforms contemplation into contribution, is up to you. Now we move on to episode 518, Breaking the Silence with Angie McQuillin. And I need to provide you with a trigger alert, as the topic covered is of a very sensitive nature, involving sexual assault. Angie McQuillin was groomed age 10 by her swimming coach and was violently sexually assaulted at the age of 16. She stayed silent about the abuse for 23 years until she reached her breaking point and went to the police aged 39. What followed was a 6-year criminal justice battle, multiple rearranged court dates, one hung jury, one retrial, and an eventual conviction for a crime committed almost 30 years ago. He was sentenced to 6 years. Angie now speaks openly about the life of being a silent survivor, including the cost of silence, what the justice system looks like from the inside, and what life on the other side of a verdict really feels like. Angie is a professional speaker, workshop facilitator, and executive coach, and for circa a decade, she's brought both lived experience and personally encountered rare insights into why people don't use their voice and what it takes to finally speak up when it'd be easier to stay silent. With vulnerability, purpose, and healing, Angie is breaking the silence. While listening to this powerful episode with Angie, I invite you to truly consider the impact of silence on yourself, your relationships, and the way you show up in all areas of your life. This conversation isn't just about overcoming a monumental personal ordeal. It's about recognizing the subtle and not so subtle ways that silence, suppression, and unspoken truths can shape and limit your existence. Here, Angie doesn't simply reflect on her experience, she acts upon it, inspiring others to do the same. One of the most striking takeaways from this episode is the concept of the cost of silence, a theme Angie repeatedly returns to. For over 2 decades, she contained and suppressed her trauma, living what she describes as a double life, never allowing the truth of her experience to integrate fully into her sense of self. Imagine for a moment what aspects of your own life you're currently keeping hidden. What secrets, struggles, or stories you carry that quietly dictate your behaviors and emotional well-being. The cost isn't only emotional. As Angie so vividly demonstrates, it affects every relationship you have, intimacy, friendships, work dynamics. Much more than just a secret. Silence grows into a shadow cast over your daily existence, often preventing you from being truly present and authentic with others, even with yourself. Her journey began with deep, painful reflection, the courage to question why she kept silent, to examine the initial promise made by a frightened 16-year-old, opened a doorway to growth. The act of questioning yourself honestly about why you think, feel, or act as you do is the root of self-understanding. Angie speaks about her long self-development journey, describing how confidence, boundaries, and communication all improved. Yet, box 50, this suppressed trauma, remained closed until she confronted it directly. Reflect on your own box 50, whatever it may be. What's the thing that you believe it's too late to address or that feels too overwhelming? Is there an area of your life where silence is costing you more than speaking out ever could? The pivotal moment in Angie's story is action, the call to the police that shattered 23 years of secrecy. She described it as the hardest part of the entire 6-year justice process. Reporting her trauma did not require everything else to be perfect. She didn't wait until she felt fully healed or certain of the outcome. In fact, taking action was what unlocked her healing. It was a victory in and of itself, regardless of the verdict. Herein lies a powerful lesson. Waiting for clarity or confidence before acting is a luxury few of us can afford. Sometimes it's taking the first step, however uncertain, that begins the process of transforming both meaning and direction. Ask yourself, What action, however small, can you take today that aligns with your inner truth? Where do you need to be unsilenced in your own life? What I found deeply moving was Angie's recognition that by speaking out, she not only set herself free, but gave permission for others to do the same. 5 people, or at least 5 that she knows of, have been inspired to report their own historic assaults after hearing her story, proving that the impact of courageous action reverberates far beyond the individual. You might reflect on how your own honesty and openness could serve others. Is there something you've healed from, overcome, or simply realized that if shared could inspire or liberate someone else? In what ways are you modeling the permission that others may need to break their own cycles of silence or limitation? The concept of boundaries and consent runs throughout our discussion. Whether it's in moments of trauma or in the seemingly mundane interactions of daily life, unspoken truths and neglected boundaries can erode your sense of agency and authenticity. Where are you allowing others to overstep, simply to avoid discomfort or conflict? Where are you not honoring your own limits? And what would it look like to speak up, even in small ways? It's not just about telling your hardest stories. It's about standing up for yourself in everyday moments, naming what's okay for you and what isn't, whether in personal or professional spaces. Your why emerges from meaningful self-reflection as you interpret your life and uncover the truth about what matters most. Your purpose is born when you act upon this understanding, when you speak, move, or change something in the world, however quietly. True transformation happens when reflection leads naturally into action, and when you allow what you've discovered about yourself to drive your next steps, however daunting. Before you finish listening to this episode, I encourage you to pause it now and take a few moments to reflect. Where is the cost of silence showing up for you? What one action, perhaps a small conversation, a confession, or a boundary put in place, could you take to tip the balance towards your own liberation? Remember, growth occurs not just in thinking, but in doing. When you couple this honest reflection with purposeful action, you don't just change your life, you give others permission to do the same. That's how you truly focus on your why. My final episode for today's compilation is episode 519, Opportunities for Alignment with James Ainsworth. James is an embodiment guide, retreat facilitator, and podcast host devoted to helping people reconnect with themselves in a deeper, more honest way. For 16 years, James has walked into burning buildings as a firefighter, forging an intimate relationship with fire, its chaos, destruction, and rebirth. Through the dragon archetype, he channels that same elemental force as purification, truth, and sovereignty. Years of personal breakdowns, relationship initiations, and identity shedding led him into deeper inner work, including therapy, men's work, embodiment practice, movement, energy healing, shadow integration, and archetypal exploration. At the heart of James's work is a simple truth. Transformation doesn't come from becoming someone new, but from embodying who you already are. When you take the time to pause and reflect, something extraordinary happens. You gain access to parts of yourself that might have been hidden by the routines and labels daily life imposes. But it's not enough to only reflect. You must then act to move from understanding to transformation. This conversation with James exemplifies this beautifully, as he takes us along his deeply personal journey of redefining the core concept of business, reframing it as purpose, and navigates the essential edge of freedom in his life. Ask yourself, how do you currently perceive your vocation, work, or the way in which you structure your everyday actions towards a meaningful outcome? Too often you might find yourself using labels and words that carry embedded expectations that may well be limiting your growth. James Ainsworth shares a pivotal insight right at the beginning of our discussion, highlighting how the word business felt stiff and disconnected from his sense of self, leading to resistance and a lack of inspiration. Imagine if every time you said or thought about business or work, what you actually experienced was anxiety or a heavy sense of duty rather than a true connection to your values. James's reflective step here was to notice the inner disconnect, to sit with the discomfort that arose, rather than pushing it away, and to ask himself, why does this word not sit right with me? But he didn't stop at reflection. Through intentional action, he reframed his entire approach, stating that by talking about purpose rather than business, he felt a deeper and feels a deeper alignment with his soul and a greater sense of freedom to allow things to unfold rather than forcing them into a predefined mold. This is a wonderful example for you to follow. Notice where your language and labels create resistance or anxiety, and ask yourself, how might you reframe them to open up rather than restrict your path forward? This isn't just wordplay. It's an invitation to realign your daily actions with your deeper sense of meaning, to create a sense of freedom and authenticity that can permeate everything you do. Another striking reflection in James's story is his approach to emotion and challenge. He describes how, following heartbreak and several relationship endings, he committed to never placing himself in that same position of pain. His response was not to close off, but to embark on a path of spiritual and personal development, pushing himself to understand patterns of attachment, rejection, and abandonment. Again, notice the sequence here: deep reflection, noticing emotions and recurrent experiences, then, crucially, action, signing up for courses, consciously developing new habits, and stepping into environments that challenge those old patterns. He shared a powerful exercise that he undertook, engaging in forgiveness work that allowed him to release old emotional patterns and, as a result, access a frequency of gratitude and love. For you, this is an opportunity to reflect. What old patterns or relationships might you still be carrying? Are you willing to take action towards release and forgiveness, not just for others, but so you can step into greater freedom within yourself? This is real-world reflection with action. The internal insights gained through reflection are only made transformative when you translate them into new ways of being. And a third key element is James's acceptance of his true values and his willingness to name freedom as a driving force in his life. Notice your own core values. Are you truly allowing your deepest value, be it freedom, connection, creativity, or something else, to shape not just your thoughts but your choices? For James, this looked like choosing vocations, firefighting, farming, and personal development work that, while full of responsibility, also hold the potential for freedom and connection with his essence. He further illustrates reflection with action by deliberately pushing the edge of his comfort zone, whether in the world of dance, facing the discomfort of partner improvisation, or reframing fear as a space for growth. He describes his metaphor of the edge as not jumping off cliffs blindly, but safely challenging his boundaries, allowing growth to occur without overwhelming his inner child or sabotaging his progress. You too are invited to ask, where is your own edge today? And what small, safe step would you allow you to expand that boundary just a little further? Ultimately, this episode is a call to a different way of living, to meet your own experiences, emotions, and language with honest reflection, and then to take courageous, aligned action. Reflect deeply on what words, values, or patterns might need gentle reframing in your life. Choose to act, even in small ways, towards a life of intention shaped by your true purpose. That is where your most fulfilling growth will be found. That's a wrap for today, but the journey doesn't end here. Share your takeaways, leave a review, or post your insights. Your voice helps others discover the value of these stories. Want to dive deeper into purpose? Check the show notes for ways to work with me. Get a copy of my book, or to sign up for Friday Focus, my weekly newsletter packed with clarity and inspiration. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why.